If you've been in a toxic relationship, there is a good chance that you could benefit from strengthening your boundaries. And there is one specific boundary weakness that a lot of us in this community struggle with, and it can leave us open to a whole lot of problems. So in this video, I am going to expose that weakness and talk about how we can strengthen it to protect ourselves from toxic people and invite healthier relationships into our lives. Stay tuned. Welcome to the Common Ego community. My name is Christina, and on this channel we talk about emotional abuse, its connection with spirituality, and we attempt to answer the question, where do we go from here? So if that all sounds good, be sure you're subscribed so you don't miss a thing. Today we are talking about healthy boundaries, but we're specifically talking about one weakness that leaves so many of us exposed. And I think a lot of us don't even realize we have it. But before we jump into that, I want to define healthy boundaries because it's something we hear so often that it almost becomes cliche. It almost sounds like this abstract concept when it's really not. So healthy boundaries involve accepting responsibility for your own actions and emotions and not accepting responsibility for someone else's actions and emotions. So this sounds so simple, right? And a lot of times when we talk about boundaries, what we're talking about is protecting ourselves from other people who are likely to trample all over your boundaries. And that's important, but it's not the full picture. We also have to protect our own boundaries from ourselves. All right, so let's imagine you're working on your boundaries and things are going really, really well, right? You feel like you're protecting yourself from those people who are so obviously trying to get in your space. And then, so you have a relationship that feels healthy. You feel like you have healthy boundaries in this relationship. And this person, the other person in the relationship, at some point, they come upon a struggle. And naturally, being an empathetic person, you want to help them. But here's the thing, they don't want your help, or they're not ready for it. So they just keep making the same mistake over and over again. And you just keep trying to help them. You keep offering your advice in hopes that they're going to see the light, in hopes that something that you say could make a difference and change their lives. But the problem is, it doesn't work that way. And this is actually where we often have holes in our boundaries, when we want to fix other people, when we want to inject ourselves into other people's lives, into other people's problems, because we see how we can help. We see how we can be of service and that they don't have to struggle anymore. But not only is this stepping on someone else's boundary, but you're actually in this taking responsibility for someone else's actions or emotions. They're not asking you to. This is where it gets tricky. When we start working on boundaries, we get really good at identifying somebody who's asking us to take responsibility for their actions or their emotions. And we can become good at diffusing that situation. But when it's you who's initiating it, you may not see that that's what you're doing, especially because it's coming from a good place, right? You're trying to help. But I feel like there's a couple of things that we need to understand. And understanding this helped me really get this and really understand the need to not to overstep and to remain within my own boundaries. So I have a couple of things I want to say about this that I think may resonate with you. But before I get to that, I want to talk about what this is and what it isn't. So the point of this video is not to get you to stop helping people. That's absolutely not what it's about. And it's not about those one-off problems and the little things that you can do to help somebody else, to help brighten somebody's day. If you see that somebody's hungry and you have 2 sandwiches, do you wait for that person to ask you for a sandwich before you give it to them or offer it to them? No, you don't have to. That's an immediate problem and solution. If you see somebody who's physically drowning, you don't need to wait for them to ask for help in order to jump in and try to save them. What I'm talking about here and what gets us into trouble are those chronic problems where somebody is constantly having the same issue over and over and over again. And we see this when somebody we love is in an abusive relationship. They just keep going back to the same person who's hurt them so many times. And it seems like they think it's not going to happen again, but you can see so clearly it's going to happen again. And you just want to help them. You want to make the decisions for them, but you can't. And we also see this with people who maybe have a narcissist in their lives and they want to help them. It could be a child or a spouse or a really good friend that you grew up with, and you see that they have an issue and they need help, and you want to help them get help. The thing is, you can't, because when you're doing that, when you're trying to help that person get help and they're not asking you to, you're trying to mess with their free will. You're trying to force them to get help. And that force is resistance. It's pressure. And that's pressure that you're initiating. You're putting pressure on yourself and you're trying to put pressure on the other person. And whenever you have that pressure, that resistance, you are bringing yourself further from your own truth and your own authenticity. You're trying to mess with somebody else's free will. And that is not what we're here for. And so this resistance that we're creating within ourselves, it's not the only resistance we have. We all have that inner voice. We have those ego-driven thoughts that are often at war with who we truly are as people. And so we always have that internal war going on. And then you have additional resistance on top of that you're inflicting upon yourself by trying to help somebody who does not want or think they need your help. And we often find ourselves in this position when we're in an emotionally abusive relationship, because the person that we're in a relationship with, you can see the things that need to change in order for your relationship to improve, in order for your relationship to get better. And while it's good to have conversations about things like that, if you feel like you keep having the same conversation over and over and over again, it's very clear that that person does not want to change and is not going to change. And nothing you can do or say is going to make that happen. And if we're being real, if we look at it in terms of resistance taking you away from your true self and your authenticity, a toxic person thrives in that place. They need that resistance to exist. And the longer you're with somebody like that, the more resistance is going to build up within you. And this is why I think that so many people have spiritual experiences as a result of these relationships. Because once you start realizing all the madness and you start letting go, you become closer to who you really are. You become closer to your true authentic self. And because these relationships are such a stark contrast, there's that person with their own resistance, and then there's you trying to change things and creating resistance within yourself. And it's all very intense. So when it starts to break apart, that's when a lot of us, I believe, have these spiritual experiences, these spiritual awakenings. Because in those moments, you're tapping into who you really are. So the takeaway and the mindset shift that can help strengthen your boundaries is the acknowledgement that we cannot save another person. We can only save ourselves. When we try to forcefully save them, we're essentially taking away their free will, or attempting to. Actually, we cannot take away their free will. Anyone has to suffer enough with their own internal war in order to make that decision that it's time to pull themselves out. And we can let people know that we'll be there when they're ready, but we cannot pull them out of it for them. But here's the good part. We all do have the tools and the resources to save ourselves. When they're ready, they'll ask the right questions and they'll ask for the help that they need. And all you really have to do is just show up and provide what you can. It's going to be effortless. It's not going to be resistance. So if you like this video, please let me know by hitting the like button. And if you want to see more like it, be sure you're subscribed, and I will see you next time.